I believe that producers who produce at a very high level attract other producers. And so when we think about the story with Apple and Steve Jobs essentially gave ownership of his company to the owner of Pepsi. He didn't give ownership of his company to someone who did not have a product already produced. You see what I'm saying? Like, producers who meet at a high level attract one another. Welcome to another episode of StoryTime podcast, episode 13.
13.
What's how many weeks in the month? 4. So this is month 4, the first week of month 4.
Week, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and really a little bit longer than that, because we started a little bit earlier and gained a few episodes, I believe, a week prior to the first release. So this is really like week 15 or 16. Hey, it takes dedication. It takes a lot. Coming back, we have a guest here. We'll introduce Jovan here in a minute, but we can kind of go around here with how's everybody's Thanksgiving? That's where we left off with.
That's right.
$1 million Thanksgiving.
That's right. My plate was just the way I envisioned it.
That's right.
Everything.
I even had both types of bread.
That's
I had
real, right?
bread and regular bread.
You know, somebody like really popped out this year at our Thanksgiving, and they had like these like Hawaiian bread rolls, and they were like glazed with like a butter and like a sugar like mix. Like it was actually pretty good.
Oh yeah.
What'd I say?
right. But yeah, that was different. But yeah, I mean, everything pretty much went just as imagined.
How was it with COVID for you guys? Was things a little bit back to normal? Like
It
with
was
Thanksgiving,
completely
or was
normal.
it?
I don't think anyone mentioned COVID while we were there.
Really? Okay, so I mean, even with mine, I mean, we didn't go fully back, and given we had some death in the family, so it's a little bit different without my uncle being in the family. So I think everybody was a little bit shaky getting all back anyways. But we had it nice, just my immediate family, my aunt and her 2 boys, and we had a good time. I ate good. Malik, I brought him back some pound cake, and it was pretty. You know, it was pretty good. If them South with an F say it's good, then it's good, right?
Hey, that dressing was good too.
And Z had some of the dressing. So I mean, hey, food A1. Shout out to my aunt for making, and my sister, her and her guy friend had a macaroni contest. So we had a lot of macaroni.
Thanksgiving break was just much needed.
Yeah.
Time to relax. Played some video games with my little brother, my friends back home. Did a little DoorDash, made a little money. But yeah, my plate was exactly how I imagined it. It was delicious. Yeah, I mean, overall, it was a good week, good weekend. So.
Yeah. How was the green bean casserole?
Right, it was good. Just like I said.
I wanted some.
I forgot it. Yeah.
I wanted some. I was actually gonna give it a try. You know, I don't try too much.
Next Thanksgiving.
So we got Jovan. Jovan is from the region. A firm introduction. Jovan is also a junior here at Wabash, just along with us. It's finally good to get him on our podcast. I was a guest on his podcast for the longest, so now it feels good to have him on our podcast, right? All right,
so
payback, returning the favor.
It feels good, don't it? Episode 13, and it feels good. Jovan, you want to introduce yourself, and how's your Thanksgiving, Jovan?
Yeah, so I'm Jovan. Like Chris said, I'm a junior. I'm a pre-med major here. Me and Chris have known actually all of us have known each other since about freshman year.
Yeah.
But my Thanksgiving was good. Obviously, you got the food, but for me, at the end of the day, it was just really just being back with family, like all together, because my brother's away in Florida.
He was able to come home, right?
Yeah, he came home, and seeing him, but just as like on a larger scale, like the larger family all to be together still. That's what I was grateful for.
Yeah. I mean, hey. We got some little background noise. This is a different setting here.
Oh, we didn't even comment on that.
We did.
For everyone watching, we're in a different setting today. We're at the Malcolm X Institute of Black Studies.
Yes, the Malcolm X Institute of Black Studies here at Wabash.
We got these nice couches, some good background. It's a nice change of setting.
So we don't have a quote for the day, but before we jump into the topic, I do want to share the spotlight with Jovan a little bit and kind of tailor him with some questions a little bit and get the audience to kind of know who he is. So,
Oh, all right.
Quick
So,
interview.
yeah,
On me, spotlight on me. All
right, yeah,
let's
it's
go.
a spotlight on you. So Jovan, one of the first things I kind of want to ask you, and you can kind of speak into, for those out who are listening who ever had a desire, any type of desire, to be not only in college but to pursue a career in medical field, what is your inspirations when it comes to going to med school, post-graduation, and also like your inspirations or your motivation to keep you going in this rough time, as we know that the classes can be very challenging. Like you're in organic chemistry right now. How are you able to kind of manage your stress, and what advice would you give to those who are kind of looking to pursue a career in med school?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you got to realize is, I think you should get information from people first off, like to see, okay, this is really what it's going to take, because you can be like, oh, I want to go to med school, I'm going to be a doctor, but that's just a thought at the end of the day. So get information, realize that it's a long haul, you're in there for the long stretch. And I think the best way really is you just got to keep a positive vibe and just stay calm.
It's a vibe all the time.
You just got to know that it's got to get done. And I think one thing with that is just in you just got to be a motivated person. You got to realize this is what you want out of life. This is what you want to do. But I think a sort of other thing that people might not consider is you want some kind of strong support system. So in terms of me, my parents are really big on that. You know, they're supporting me whether I have a bad day, because you'll have bad days in med school where things are, or even preparing for med school where things are coming up, and that speaks to everybody. But someone to talk to, someone to pick you back up, that's the main thing. But if you're really in for it, I'd just say keep going, do whatever you need to do it, and nothing's not achievable, whatever it takes.
That's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge.
I mean, the way I see that, like, if you're doing med school, it's like you're running a marathon.
Yeah.
I'm a sprinter, you know, so I'm just here for my 4 years. And I'm done.
50-meter dash.
Well, I was gonna say Malik kind of speak to it because he kind of came in with the intentions of, you know, going to law school, right? So
Right. I always knew that I wanted to save the world with either a gavel or a scalpel. And, like, I would always tell people, like, I'm genuinely stuck in between choosing, like, law and medicine. People were like, how? Like, those are just, like, completely different. But, like, really, like, for me, like, they were two different methods of, like, helping people. And I think that as I really kind of went through, like, my first two years of college, I think that to some extent, like, my view, like, my mind was kind of narrowed, right, as far as, like, the paths or, like, the routes that I can take if my goal is to truly help people. I think, like, a law degree will help me in achieving that you know, goal, but really, like, being a lawyer, I don't think is the heart of what I really want to do.
See, and that's the key
And
thing too.
And we got a guest who. Okay, we got somebody outside. We want to bring him in, but he didn't want to come in.
He's a
But
shy guest.
That's the key
yeah.
too, though. To speak on what Malik said when he talked about. I mean, at the end of the day, if that's not what you want to do, it really doesn't matter. Like, you can talk about, and this is a real thing. I know a lot of people that'll just go in it for the salary. You know, you just think like checks, all of this lavish lifestyle, but I don't think you realize at the end of the day, if you don't like what you're doing, it's not gonna matter, because to wake up every single day and to hate what you're doing or like not enjoy it, like it's not worth it, because you spend all this time in school working, busting your butt, whatever, and now you go into the real world and your job is just not something you're into. Like you're just not a happy person.
You're gonna be in debt, and you're gonna be like stressed and miserable, really.
that makes me think of. I have a friend of mine who's and right now we're kind of working together on some collab activities, but he's just kind of struggling. Like, he's went to college, he's getting his degree, but he's kind of struggling to. He's a junior as well, and he's struggling to figure out, like, his place in the world, right? Yeah. More ethically and morally, like, he's like, where do I fit in that, or even with this that aligns with his faith in doing good service? So it's like many times that, for those who do actually discover like what my values and things are, right? It's like, where do I find my place in the world? So, like, even when Malik talks about helping people, or Jovan, I think that's one of the reasons that you want to go to med school, is to be able to help somebody. So it's like being able to find your place. I think not easy school route, but an easy way of doing so is with med or law. But besides those things, it's like it gets a little grimy, right? And even in that business, it's medicine for business rather than medicine for health, right? Or medicine for the better. Even when we talk about healthcare and stuff too. So
I'm sure we could do a whole podcast about what's wrong with our healthcare system in America, but we don't have to touch on that today. You want to hop into the topic?
You guys ready? Y'all ready to do a podcast?
Let's do it.
All right. So starting off today, I want to challenge. I want to start off with a question related to. I want everyone to kind of think about their 24 hours in the day, right? I want you to think about within those 24 hours, how much of that are you consuming versus how much of that are you actually producing? And so when I think of that, right, and I'll break down the difference. When I think of producing, and actually let's do this. I will actually give a definition of both when it comes to producing and when it comes to consuming. And then we can go from there when it comes to your initial thoughts on how much out of the 24 hours in the day. So to produce means to make or manufacture from components or raw materials. Another example is to cause to happen or come into existence, right? Bring about. And then consuming, on the other hand, means completely filling one's mind and attention. Observing. How do you guys say it? Observing. Yeah. So out of 24 hours in the day, how much of that are you consuming versus producing? What's your initial thoughts on that?
I'm probably not producing as much as I should be. That's my initial thoughts. But I don't know. When you're talking about consuming, obviously you can think about, like being a consumer and like buying products. But I think it's, it's more than that. Because I think like myself, I spend at least an hour a day just like watching YouTube videos. And so like in that, I'm being a consumer. I'm consuming content or videos. And when I hear like producing, I think about, being productive because like they have the same word stems. And I'm thinking, so like producing, right, you could be like making something, like making products in like a business sense, but like producing as like, it goes farther than that because even just like doing work or like just being on the clock, making money, those are like examples of producing.
What's your thoughts?
For me, it was an initial like both at the same time, right? Like I think I honestly view my life, and I know like over the past few podcasts I've been talking about like my journey and like taking a step back, right, and kind of trying to look at my life in a much more broader picture. But for me, it's like I'm consuming because I feel like I'm always observing, right? Like I'm always like trying to make the most informed decision with the knowledge that I have, right? Yeah. And then for the producing aspect, for me, like I kind of view like every day as like a new path and specifically like a new series of like crises that I have to figure out like how to maneuver through. So it's producing, at least in my head, as in like I'm literally paving a new path every single day of how to address and get around these crises, right? Like these issues, these, I don't know, just like living life, right? Just like small fires, like, and every day it's like a different path, right? Different context, different circumstance.
Yeah, I think initially when you posed this question, Chris, I thought it was more simple than now what we're discussing. So initially my thought was just when you learn something, you're consuming something, and now it's up to you to apply or produce it. But as like to Malik's point, like when you view it, like you could still argue the point that you just completing a day as you've produced that you can complete another day in this world by whatever means necessary. That's your production. But I don't think you can just simply just state like these are like the boundaries or anything of that. I think it's you asked such a simple question and gave these easy definitions, but at the end of the day it's just so complicated.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the roots of the question that I don't think we really addressed yet is Chris was really focused on time. Like, how much time do you spend producing and how much time do you spend consuming? Because and my initial like thought when you posed it was like, if you're consuming more than you're producing in a day, and you do that like regularly, then like ultimately, you're gonna end up consuming more than you produce, and I feel like that is like being unproductive. You know what I'm saying?
I would argue against that in a sense, because I'm just taking to our lives, like the majority of going to college is you're consuming information.
Yeah, I mean, but I could argue that being productive would be doing your homework, writing your essays, studying for exams.
That's true.
Right.
So I'll bring it back after initials and kind of pose the way that this was actually set up to be viewed, right? So when it comes to production, many of us, when it comes to longevity in life or success, those who are successful have produced something. Mm-hmm. Those who tend to be unsuccessful are the ones that are consuming what others have produced. So when it comes to consuming, how much you consume in a day, it's more phased of the sense of how many TV shows has somebody else produced that you're consuming that's giving them money into their pockets, or how many items are you buying when you're not growing the items in your backyard, right, and selling them for a profit. Is that will be considered producing. So when it comes to 24 hours, are you producing something for longevity, or are you consuming something for someone else's longevity? And many times when we consume more than we produce, that leads to being unhappy, right? But we don't necessarily tend to see that because we don't recognize when we're stuck into, we're watching TV 10 hours out of the day, and we're like, why are we not seeing the results that someone else is seeing? When 10 hours of their day, they're producing some type of, whether it's a piece of paper, they're producing some type of, they're working, producing some type of income, they're producing some type of something, when essentially they can get something in return from that, right? So that's a production. Even us being at college every single day is us producing longevity. We're producing a degree, right? We're not just we're consuming knowledge, yes, but we're essentially this is working to produce a degree, right? So that's kind of where that kind of stems from, right? So kind of talk about from the angle of consuming, and when we consume, how do we feel, as well as how easy it is for those and many of us to get stuck in the state of consuming rather than producing.
So would it be fair to exchange producing with like investing into something that's gonna
yes,
like have actual returns for you in some way?
Slightly,
I think investing has different. Like,
I was gonna say
meaning.
I was gonna say investing is more like
sowing seeds, like
yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes,
yes,
like planting.
Yeah,
right?
like kind of
planting.
thing. Like.
Yeah.
But I mean, is going to work planting a seed?
So it's planting a seed for income.
Right, because you're going to eventually get paid for the work that you invest, for the time and
I
energy you invest.
I guess you could say.
Okay, so then on the other end, it's like going to... No, that's a bad example. But watching TV is the easiest thing that all of us can relate to. When we watch the TV, are we consuming? Like, we're consuming someone else's product. That somebody produced this TV show. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like, if we spend more time, that's those people who produce the most see the most in return. You see, but like if you don't have anything to produce, if you don't have anything that's produced by you, how do you expect to see something in return? Like books, somebody produced a book a long time ago, and they're constantly seeing other people consume that book. But if you have nothing for people to consume, how do you expect to be at the highest level of success?
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How do you know that there isn't something on TV that's going to lead to a thought that starts your $1 million company?
I guess that depends on what you're watching.
Or does it?
Are you watching?
Or does it genuinely?
No, I mean, it's genuinely still consuming. Let's not get this wrong.
But I'm saying I think we're devaluing the value of consumption.
I don't think we're devaluing
in this definition. Right,
okay, so let's say this, because I think it's good, because it's not saying that we should not consume at all.
Right.
Right, and I want to get that clear. It's
well,
not
that's
that
impossible. You need to consume in order to survive. Like,
exactly.
consume food at least.
But also to be but to be successful, you need to produce. So I kind of want to get this.
Okay.
I kind of want to get this, like, how do we find a balance and how do we kind of address that in our own lives, right? Like, how do we find out of 24 hours, how much should we consume versus, like, right? Because, like,
I feel
essentially,
like what we're kind of getting down to is like live within your means. But like that's that's like skipping a couple steps in the conversation.
Okay.
But like live within your means. So like if you're only making $30,000 a year, maybe you don't get a $200,000 house and you don't get a Ferrari, right? You don't go out to the club twice a week, every week. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be more frugal with your money, and you gotta maybe put in some more work to get a better job. Or if you're content with your job, that you could really manage your spending in a way to where like you can get by and save some money, and like you don't have to be like stressed out and in debt and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
So how does that kind of correlate with that production or that consumption?
Like you consume less, so you're not broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the more you consume, the more you have to produce in order to like.
Do we think that? You just mentioned something. The more you consume means the more that you have to produce. But that's tough because like you could. I don't know if we can correlate that.
I was gonna say like
Man, if you're
where are
talking
you trying to
about
go with
producing
that,
an
though?
actual product, like no one has to produce like you.
Well, that's what I'm
No one
getting at.
has to invent things. It's like.
But like I'm getting at, you have to produce something, like whether that's
work.
Money, right?
like produce.
I think that's more. It's not even you have to produce it. I think the whole structure of society is kind of forcing you to produce it.
Exactly. That's how.
Well, if you consume more than if everyone consumes more than they produce, then society falls apart. There won't be enough stuff to consume.
Well, that's what we do now.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to how that. Like I feel like you made a connection, but I don't see how the connection is as clear as you see it.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to break down.
The connection between what though?
As far as like you feel like it boils down to like just live within your means, right? Like
Okay,
Yeah.
so that connection.
Yeah.
So like you have to be cognizant of how much you produce, and like we're correlating this financially, like specifically, and so you have to like consume less than you produce if you want to keep growing. Okay. If you consume exactly the same amount that you produce, right, then you're not growing, but you're also not like going down a hole.
I see what he's saying.
And this is
And if you consume more than you produce, then you're gonna end up in debt and
financially.
economic.
I was gonna say economically. 100%.
Yeah, I think I'm the numbers guy.
So then, are you saying overall, you would have to produce more? Like that's the thing.
Produce more income.
Yeah.
Than what you're spending, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like if you're thinking time wise, maybe the times don't necessarily correlate, because if your consumption is TV, right? Let's say you're watching Netflix. Netflix is what, like $15 a month? I think they keep raising the price. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So like $15 a month, right? So you could watch 8 hours of Netflix every day and work for 4 hours. I mean, obviously, like this is just one thing, because you're also like consuming electricity and you're consuming,
of course,
your rent or whatever. But like you could work, theoretically, you could work like 6-7 hours a day, and consume for 8 hours a day, and you could, still gain money and still go up. So like it's not.
Every person.
It depends.
Different.
Right. So it also depends on like how steeply you're consuming, because it's the difference between your $15 a month Netflix. If you break that down by a day, it's like 50 cents a day for 30 days. But like going to Six Flags for one day is $60.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's the difference between 50 cents and $60. So like it depends on like, are you buying cheap stuff or are you buying expensive stuff? And
yeah, I think you're hitting.
So in other terms, other than economically, externally, it's almost like if you're producing, like you can produce very little, but if you produce that's worth a lot,
quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Then like
the same thing goes for production,
That's
right?
right.
You could work at McDonald's, right? And you're putting in 40 hours a week, and you're only making $8 an hour. That's a lot different than working 20 hours a week making $20 an hour, right? So
And that's why I would say that it's so essential for us to produce something, right? Because like when we think about it, many of us, myself included, up until this point, up until last year, really, I had nothing to my name in production. It's like if I want to make money, then it's like I haven't produced the music. Like, and we can talk about this in music terms too as well. Yeah. It's like I've produced a song. Now it's like people are consuming my song. Mm-hmm. Like I produced of course, to a higher scale, a book or a shoe brand or a sock, or I've produced a T-shirt.
See, but you keep coming to like physical like.
Well, yeah, that's what I want to talk about, because it's like physical things that you're consuming.
So
it's kind of what I want to talk about.
Are you trying to get at like you have to produce something to get rich?
To be yes.
Like you have to produce a, what's the word, a like consumable, in order to.
And I would
get
say
rich, like an item, or
yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. What do you guys think?
Something physical.
Yes.
But I disagree, because you could offer a service.
But you produce that service.
Yeah, I mean, in a way.
You produce what that person consumed for the service.
I guess.
I'm just saying the examples you keep giving are like physical goods, so I was trying to challenge you to go beyond physical goods.
Well, I want to talk about physical goods first, and I want to get like their piece on physical goods.
I guess like on a really like logical level, like yes, like you have to.
It has to be
do something
physical.
like to eat or like survive, like so.
No, but even he's saying like even something you produce, there's nothing like in your brain that like it has to be something you can see physically, or like a company or something that is making like that's where I'm stuck at. Like what would be an example of that?
Philosophers, artists, like all these other things that are like kind of. But like not really valuable.
Like physical. Like where would you see that stuff? That would be on something physical. Like it would be in a book, on like a poster or something.
Now you got to take into account like my field, of expertise, which is like financials and data analytics. I'm not really producing anything, and maybe I'm producing graphs, but like that's not really like a physical thing. You know what I'm saying?
But
like,
that would get you.
But like
paid.
it's still,
I'm producing
you're still
insights.
Something. You're still producing something.
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like
it seems like ambiguous logic. Like it covers everything.
You know what I mean? Like there's nothing. But like, and I agree that it does kind of correlate with everything, which is why I kind of want to talk about how do we get to that point. Like we have of recognizing, for one, we have to speak to being able to recognize the difference between production and consumption. Right. And secondly, how do we get to the point of finding a balance, and how have we been able to do that in our own lives? Yeah. It's kind of what I want to get.
I think step one, right, is just being cognizant of it. And, like, so, like, maybe, like, a mental exercise. Every time you're doing something, or whenever you can, just try and, like, stop yourself and think, like, is what I'm doing, am I producing or consuming? Like, ask yourself that question, right? And then, I mean, you'll start to gather the data, and you'll say, like, it seems like most of the time when I ask myself that question, I'm consuming. Maybe I need to produce more.
I just can't. I can't weigh them against each other, because
so don't weigh them, but more, how have you been able to find that balance in your own life?
But for me, it's like I let myself consume, because I acknowledge that, like, I don't know what I'm going to get out of the consumption, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm at a point in my life where I'm acknowledging that, like, I may not know the future, right? Like, I don't know, like, if I do this program, or if I take this path in life, I don't know what it's going like what it's gonna like produce or change in me, and like I acknowledge that. So like looking at like this production versus consumption, like in my head, it's like you can't because like there's an immeasurable value in both.
So let me ask you this: do you consume with the intent of producing?
Now that I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
So that would be so let's talk about the intent, right? Like when you consume, because not everyone consumes with the intent of producing anything. Mm-hmm. Some consume with the intent of consuming.
What if you consume with the intent to produce joy or like relaxation or something like that?
See, now that's where we will have to find the balance, right? Because like you could produce joy and happiness now, but in the same time, like you consuming, does that produce happiness and longevity?
But does it matter about longevity?
What if you die tomorrow?
What if you die?
But like we're thinking about, yes, I agree. What if And that's why it's the beauty of it, right?
That's
because
why you
it's
gotta
like,
find the balance.
exactly.
We gotta balance the now with the future.
Hey, Jovan, I'll challenge you to kind of, what do you kind of think of this?
In terms of like what?
In terms of the balance in your own life, rather, like, do you consume with the intent of producing, or have you been able to find a balance between, obviously, producing this college degree and also consuming on your own time? Like, what do you find in consuming, right? And have you been able to notice that I am consuming versus I am producing? Like, have you been able to notice that in your own life?
I think the first basic general question that I ask myself is what am I getting out of, like, what do I want to produce essentially, right? So this is now my scale that I've created. Because everyone's different. What I want to produce in life is different from what you want to produce in life.
Agree.
Or what Malik or Zenon. And when you go there, I think in terms of getting that production, now what you're trying to do is you find I guess you find your own balance essentially. And it's not something where like, oh, this is my balance. I think it's more of a attempt and fail until you finally get like your groove and you say, okay, this didn't work for me. If I continue along this path, I'm not going to get the production I want, or this does work for me. So if you're talking of my personal experience, which again, it relates to college in this moment of time, it's like, one, like, what do I consume in school, you consume in classes. Then, okay, what am I consuming to feel joy, to feel relief of when I study? And then ultimately my production, like, how I value if I like my production or not at this point is like, what are my grades at? What is my mental health at? And stuff like that. And that's where, let's say your grades doing good, but your mental health is terrible. Well, that's not good for you. So now you have to change your consumption in a different route, or vice versa. So you got to find that balance where, for you, you're on the correct path, but at the same time, you're in a healthy state of mind.
That's good. That's good. That's really good.
So on that, like, I had a similar point where, like, you have to try and satisfy, right, both, like, the future and the now. So you have to balance it in a way so that you're producing, like I said, more than you're consuming so that you can build for the future. But at the same time, you have to consume enough that you're not miserable.
I see what you're saying.
You have to consume enough, like, so that you can be content in the now, or like, happy in the now.
I would like to raise the question of our production, right? So when we think about our production, because we could produce grades, we can produce music, we can produce a product, we can produce all these different things, even in the positions that we are now. How do we pick and choose? And 100% is good, regardless of what we produce. It's always good to produce something. Like, we can see the benefit in that.
Yeah.
But how do we pick and choose what we produce? And because we don't know what essentially will get us to the moon, essentially. But it's like, how do we pick and choose? How do we fathom what we produce at all, rather and what do we produce next? If that makes sense. Like, how do we kind of? For you, it's like.
Well, I was gonna come back to the balance. I'm gonna keep hammering on balance because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Libra, but if you're into astrology, anyway. So, like, you gotta find the balance again between the future and now, because everything you're producing, right? We talked about has different, like, I want to say slopes, but I think only math people will understand. So, like, they have different, I guess, values of production, or you know what I'm saying, like. So, like I said, $20 an hour versus $8 an hour. So, like, the $20 an hour is most beneficial to you now, but maybe the $8 an hour, right, is an investment, right? So maybe, you're not getting a lot out of it now, but maybe that will grow to end up being $100 an hour, a year or two down the road. So you have to find that balance again between the now and the future, because maybe, like I said, what's the most, like, efficient, production to manage your time now, maybe you should also, like, put in something that's, like, not as efficient but is more of an investment.
So let me ask this. I want to ask Jovan this.
I got a little, like, real technical there.
I get you, and I want to ask Jovan this though. Jovan, you wanted to create a product at one point. You wanted to create a product where it was going to stop the door from, and I don't want to give away too much of this.
Nah, hold on.
But, you know,
right.
but like for a door, right? You want to create a product for a door.
Yeah.
And that's a production. That's something you have to produce.
Yeah.
You're also at the same time producing a grade.
Right.
Right now, you're finding more. You're putting more effort into producing the grade rather than producing the product. Why is that?
I think
that's kind of what I want to get at. Yeah.
Personally, for me, I think it's really at this point, I could argue stability, and also time. So, at this moment in time, as a college student, I'm not very stable in life. Maybe I could be, but I'm speaking as of right now in my situation. If I was to give up school, I wouldn't be a stable human being. I'd have to pretty much start from scratch. So that's why I'm putting this more into the long term. And I would argue, as a person, when you become more complete as an individual, then you can go on and do different challenges and face different things. But in terms of like, I mean, to counter your point, I could just be like, and I've thought about it, you know, during summer break, during winter break, why don't I do that? And I think that's just more on me and just me being lazy. And that's just on me, you know? So I think right now you have to set in what do I value more. And in this moment in time, it is just the school route for me personally. But someone with a different mindset, different brain might say, you know what, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to build this product and I'm going to propose it to companies and it's either going to work or it's not.
Is it fair to say that maybe your decision to prioritize school over your product, is it fair to say that maybe like one was viewed as more feasible or more realistic, or being
I was
safe?
thinking something along the same lines.
I would say safe, like risk.
We're safe.
So yeah.
I was gonna say produce. It sounds like we produce what we believe in.
No, but I could believe in my product, but at this moment in time with my stability and knowing that route is more high risk, is that what you were kind of getting at?
But
no, but I can see they kind of do talk to each other, but if you believe in it to a great extent, why did you not act on it?
Because again, it's just a risk thing. Like, you can believe all you want, and I mean, I can keep pursuing for the rest of my life, right? But at the end of the day, just because I'm pursuing, it might never work out. That might never, like, wasn't meant to be.
But please critique this analogy if it doesn't fit.
Okay.
But in my mind, if a man is on top of a building and he believes enough that if he jumps off the building he's gonna fly, in my head he's gonna jump. And if he doesn't jump, then that means that he doesn't believe that he's really gonna fly, right? To some extent, he doesn't believe that it's actually going to happen when he jumps off the building.
Well,
I guess saying is he's scared of
I'm saying like you'll jump, but like you still might not fly. Like that's where I'm getting at.
But I'm saying, then doesn't that mean that you don't really believe that this is solid enough, right? Like you don't have a solid enough belief that you can jump off this.
So I'll swing this back to you, Malik.
Yeah.
So by you saying this, do you believe that we produce what we essentially believe in?
To a certain extent, yeah. I think that. I think that, like, to use production in the way we're using it, like you're investing. If I may, you go back to that word. Like you're investing time, energy, and effort. A lot of it, like, into school, right? I think people really believe that their path of education is going to improve them and get them the results that they want. So they invest a lot in it. I think if you just as equally believed in a business venture or a product, I think you would also invest the same amount, right?
I want to take this to a level of so let's think of the highest producers that we know right now, and you guys are probably better than this than I am because I don't follow as much, but I'm assuming like Elon Musk and what's my man's name? Mark Zuckerberg.
We'll say like Tesla, Microsoft, Apple.
All those people, right? What they've done is produced at a very high level. They have produced. Even let's take Apple for example. They started from the iMac to the iPhone 13 with the 6 cameras on the back and the 6K and the 8K and the 4G. Like they've went to a
5G,
level, 5G. Excuse, they've produced at a very high level. And what I want to get at is that, like, for one, I'm going to phrase how I believe it. I believe that producers who produce at a very high level attract other producers. And so when we think about the story with Apple and Steve Jobs essentially gave ownership of his company to the owner of Pepsi. He didn't give ownership of his company to someone who did not have a product already produced. You see what I'm saying? Like, producers who meet at a high level attract one another. Do we believe that?
I think to a certain extent, but
Because I do.
if you also think about it, like, these companies grew by gaining more consumers. So couldn't I kind of like counter your argument and say like their main goal is not to make producers, it's to make more consumers?
Yes, but essentially what happens is, what I'm trying to get at, producers see someone that's producing and essentially want to continue to, either they're going to take you and bring you to the top because they notice what you've been producing, or they meet you at the top and you guys continue to produce and take advantage of all the consumers out in the world. That's success. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, thinking about Tesla, they held something called like AI Day, and their sole intention was to try and recruit the best like AI specialists in the world. Oh, somebody's got to wake up.
I know, right?
And so, like, they put on this whole presentation to like show what they're producing and like the high level that they're producing at to try and attract the greatest producers. So like, I mean, there's evidence right there, but like Johan said, I think the ultimate goal is attracting more consumers.
And I think that's the thing. I think
is it attracting them or is it taking advantage of them?
I don't like that. I don't like that.
Is it not?
Well,
but you're not taking advantage of them. You're giving them a consumable, something for them to consume.
Think about it if it was a game, right? If it's a game, then the goal is to take it or to gain as many consumers as possible. Because essentially, those consumers are the ones that elevate you to a higher level as a producer. So once you become a producer, you get with other producers to eventually, and this is why I say take advantage of other consumers, because it's taking advantage of them because you're not showing them the key to win the game.
Go ahead, Malik.
But, I mean, isn't this just the basis for some conspiracy theory that all the world's richest people are in the secret Illuminati and they just run the world?
Oh no, it's not that deep. This is more practical.
You're saying
I mean,
that, like,
you're kind of getting towards that direction.
yeah, like,
is it not practical though? Like that's what I'm trying.
I believe there's merit to what you're saying. Like, it does happen, but like I don't think all the producers are in some secret club, working with each other
because
to
they've
control the
attracted
consumers.
each other.
Well,
right?
no, that's not necessarily what I mean. As in, like, all the producers are. It's almost like a collaboration.
Yeah.
It's almost like a producer. If I can see that I can get with another producer and eventually create this product,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, I mean, you see it in
This is
in
how we
music
make
all the
more money.
time.
Yeah.
You see it in music all the time. Like, people see up and coming artists, and they'll want to work with them, and they work together to build each other's fan bases and stuff. So like,
My point.
I'm like I've been saying like you're not wrong,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it's only to an extent.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But like I was just getting at the taking advantage thing. Like we don't think that like even when we see.
So you're saying like when Lil Baby and Young Dolph like did a song together, they were taking advantage of each other's listeners, and that's the only reason they made a song together.
Let's go to a physical product,
Right.
not music or art, but like an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
let's stay there with our
Okay.
example.
Mhm.
So iPhone like collaborates with T-Mobile, so that like it gives them some kind of special deal or something
I think if I'm
to
understanding,
take advantage of the iPhone users and get them to use T-Mobile.
I think a better example would be like Apple, like, establishing an entire culture around using their device that creates like this social superiority, right? And so
Okay.
deep to the point to where like if you text someone who doesn't have an iPhone, like it's out, like it almost puts a negative taste in your mouth, like like the green bubbles, like is that an exploitation of human nature? Like, is that like somebody actually studied like humans are like just this kind of like they like that kind of social status, like that can be really powerful, right?
There's a great show or documentary on Netflix. I believe it's called The Social Network, that literally speaks about what Malik says and how the tech world has kind of created this society where our social status is very important, and it allows them essentially to kind of take advantage of us in that way. And I think when you're talking about producers finding other producers, I think when you find somebody like that, it's because you realize like they have not fallen into that trap in a sense, essentially. And they're, I don't want to say brighter than the others, but like in a sense they figured out a way to realize like this isn't it, you know. I got out of this.
I like to think of it the divergent, like the divergent that's, you know,
sure,
that
yeah,
got the shot and then didn't, no, I like that movie.
I like they just have a different perspective on the world.
Yeah,
like it's just different.
Yeah,
like I don't think that it's any better or worse. I think that they have a role in the greater world that contributes to it. You know what I mean? It like just as everybody else, right? Like I feel like the CEO has a role, and the janitor also has a just as vital role in the. You know what I mean? As far as like the function of the company.
Yeah.
I would question. So like, do you guys think those people that are producers, if we're talking about like we went back to tech companies or like Apple or something, would you say those are the people that follow the trends of human society?
Those are the people that I would say set the trends, or they studied the trends of human society.
Well, how can you can't set them if you begin down here, like, you know what I'm saying?
So yeah, so then in that case, then it's like those are the ones who are able to recognize the trends of human society and capitalize upon the trends of human society.
I would say, yeah.
So even when we think about social media, and this is what I say is taking advantage, because they don't look at consumers, and as much as even with music, regardless of what it is, I love my fan base, I love my audience. At the end of the day, everything that we're doing is making them money, so of course they're going to love us.
Right.
So it's almost like as if, and some people generally do care because like they, you know, like we're producing something and it could be very beneficial to us as consumers, right? Like I love NBA YoungBoy and I'm not gonna stop listening to his music just because he's taking advantage of me. Like I like his music, you know what I'm saying? Like it benefits me, right? So my thing is when they think about it though, it's like these people who are in this room are taking advantage of the consumers because this is the way that they make more money.
Is it taking advantage of the
See,
consumer?
I don't like that phrase.
Yeah.
I think
I think taking advantage may be too strong.
so.
It's almost like catering, like
Radical.
I mean, it's almost
It's
like
radical.
how it's
radical.
Yeah, it's almost like how Cardi says, like, I'm going to make songs about what people want to hear. Like when I tried to rap, like when I tried to sing about not having sex or like all these explicit things, like it didn't sell. But the moment I started, you know, rapping about like all this, you know, explicit and sexual stuff, like it sold like, it sold like candy.
But it's almost like they know what that stuff does, right? Like even with social media, it's like Facebook and them, like they know that these things are addicting. But they don't make them stop. That doesn't stop them.
I think you're just capitalizing on a trend. Like again, like that's.
So are you trying to point out a correlation between like addiction and capitalism and how?
It's very much so. This is how capitalism works. Hands down.
Capitalism feeds on addiction.
This is capitalism. It feeds on those who feed on. It feeds on the consumers.
Right.
Those at the top of capitalism feed on those who are consuming.
It's certainly on a face value a level of exploitation of the consumer, right? It took $12 to make this product, and I'm selling it to you for $30, right? I mean, that's like a clear exploitation of the consumer. But I don't know. There's something about that phrasing that I think is just a little off because I don't think that, like, I think that. So, for example, like opioids, I would consider capitalism a system that really doesn't consider that, or like consider like the moral implications, rather like much more like economical. So, like, I think that like when they created opioids, like they maybe genuinely saw them as like a scientific breakthrough of like, you know, like we can, you know, effectively block pain, right? Not necessarily considering, right, like how somebody may get addicted to them and then it's almost like a form of immoral.
See,
right?
I think that you're right. There are times when like the addiction isn't like calculated, but there's definitely times where it is. Right?
Which is where I think when these producers get at the high level, when those conversations that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg are having is how can we take advantage of these people, these young kids that's smoking nicotine.
Yeah, but you don't know that, right? I mean,
we don't.
I was thinking more
sure.
like TikTok. Like TikTok is like intentionally addictive. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I think all of our media,
Yeah.
particularly like the news, is becoming this form of it, like this nice
It's
media.
still
You know what I mean? Like this like media and drama to kind of keep you sucked into it, right? Like
Yeah.
to kind of keep you watching.
Drama
I
is
think,
addicting, yeah.
I think in general, like that's kind of where we're headed.
So let's.
It's powerful. It really is powerful, and like it goes back to our start of, we must produce something.
In order to what?
See, I was trying to get back to the balance.
Okay.
We were kind of already establishing you need to produce more than you consume, whatever, right? But we want to talk about like, all right, we need some type of example. But like my point is, right? You got, like I said, there's two types of production and there's two types of consumption, right? Short term and long term. And I was thinking about this a little while ago, and like your short term production should cover your short term consumption. And then your long term production should cover your long term consumption, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So we could try and use Jovan's school in his business idea, right? So you would have to pick something that like you can't budge on, and maybe that's your long term consumption, which would be school, right? So school is something you're consuming for the long run. And so you're saying, okay, I gotta do school, I gotta do this consumption. Well, now your long-term production, which would be like doing your schoolwork, right? It doesn't really, it's really low valued, like return on your work, because you're not like really making any money. I mean, if you want to relate it to money, but like in the long run, you're gonna get a degree which will allow you to make more money. So you have to, if you say, this is how much long-term I want to consume, then you can say like, this is how much I need to produce in order to cover that. And also, like if you're consuming like a set amount for the long term, now you know exactly how much consumption like you have left for short term, and then like that short term consumption needs to be covered by your short term production, which would be like your campus, like my campus job, right? Like I'm making like more money than I am doing homework.
Short term.
Right, so I'm making like $10 an hour or $9 an hour, whatever. Right, so I need to make enough money. Like I need to work enough, make enough money to cover my short-term consumption, which would be like going out to eat and my
you need
my
a
Netflix
budget.
subscriptions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You need a balanced budget.
So right, there's 4 things you got to budget there, and like there's. And it goes across, match the short terms and the long terms. Like this is something I thought about like maybe 5-10 minutes ago, and I've just been sitting on it, letting it stew.
Economically,
And that's a way, like, because the main question was how do you balance it, right? And so that I guess is my best attempt at balancing it.
I would say that's only economically, because.
But I mean, at the end of the
can't-
day, like, what else are we trying to balance?
Your mental health.
But
Your
like
mental health.
Well,
Yeah,
well, like
I would
other
argue
things,
that.
like and also,
But isn't that what the short-term consumption is about? It's
But-
about relieving your mental
But
health.
watch this though. This is the thing. This is why it's hard to balance if it's not economically, because we don't know the repercussions
I think so.
of
I think
consumption.
it might just be the screen instead. Maybe the camera might.
Yeah, the camera's good. We don't know the repercussions of our consumption, nor do we know the benefits of what we produce. So it's hard to find a balance between the two when we don't know what's going to come from.
Well, what do you mean? I know when I go to work and I produce my $9 an hour, I know exactly what I'm getting.
That's economically. Let's say you produce your song, your
Right, so
album.
that would be a long term.
But whatever the case it is, you don't know what's going to come from that.
Right. Like,
That's an
short
I
term.
agree that that's an investment, but I do know that like making my song right now,
But-
right, by making the song, I'm not directly making any money unless it somehow blows up.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't know what comes from what you produce.
Right.
But that's still long term. You know what I'm
But
saying?
regardless of what it is, like,
But like I can't devote all my time to that production when I'm not sure that it's going to pay out now because I have short-term consumption.
Well, this is a
I need to
cost-benefit
cover for
analysis,
now.
though. Like this is a cost-benefit analysis that like you can change very constantly, right? Like
Yeah.
depending on a bunch of context. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tricky.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, fine.
If I'm gonna like produce music, I also need to have that other form of production that's more
Right.
efficient
Right.
to cover my short-term consumptions.
Right. Like,
well, that's. I think that's still like. Yeah, I think you're still thinking about it economically.
I don't think you can avoid that.
Because we
you know?
can't-
That's how I
it's-
think.
it's-
But okay. So like,
That's
let's
how I
say
think,
like
Chris.
taking some time off to play video games.
Right.
Yes.
Like
that's-
you're not producing. You're not being productive.
That's
like
consuming.
right. Like
Yeah.
you're not being productive. So
How do you balance?
It's consuming.
Like, how do you find a balance between producing a song and consuming a video game? Like,
right. Or like doing your homework and like producing. You know what I mean?
Like,
And I said how we do that.
Yeah.
I think you could just. I mean, you can even look at it as like, okay, let's say he can't find a line for a song, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been driving him crazy for 5 hours or whatever. He can't think of something for a song. So it's a difference between you taking a break, whether that's playing a video game, doing something else for an hour. So you're consuming, and your production of that is joy and maybe clearness, relaxation, so now you can think more clearly. And then there's also a difference of him deciding to take a break, and it's an 8-hour break, and then that consumption is not productive for you because you've wasted all this time.
but like, my thing is when it comes to, because I really do think that it's challenging. It really is, and I think when it comes to finding the balance, it's like I don't necessarily think we can find an equal balance. I think we can just,
Of course not.
No.
but I think we can find. I think when it comes to time, possibly, but like when it comes to making a because we just say for example, if it's between consuming a Netflix TV show, which I know is going to benefit me in being happy or benefit me in this way, but then going to go produce a book or something, like I just don't know what's going to come from. You see what I'm saying? Like we don't know the repercussions.
So how do you properly balance it? I'm
I'm
not
and
feeling
so, like,
it because
that is a different That's a different example. So I analyzed the example of like doing the school mixed with the other stuff. So in this case, right? So you want to devote as much time to writing your book as possible because you want to invest that because you think that it's going to reap rewards later. Correct?
But that's a scale that's weighing the future, right, more than the present currently.
I was just trying to like establish that, right? So you want to devote as much time as possible. That's your goal, to devote as much time as possible to working on your book, right? Because you believe
My goal is just to produce the book.
Right. Yeah,
My
that's
goal
what I
is
was
just to
saying. Like
produce the
that.
book.
No. So I'm thinking about like time in a day, like managing, because all you can do is manage what you do today, right?
Okay.
And you can plan your day tomorrow and maybe the next day. You can plan a week out, maybe even a month if you're really like into planning, right? But you can't. It's hard to plan every little thing. But right, so you can set up your days, right? So where your goal is to, produce the book. So you need to figure out how much time like you need to work a job in order to make money, right? In order to cover your living expenses now. Okay? So like what's the minimum amount of time, right, that I have to spend at work, right? And finding a better job with higher pay means you can spend less time. Right? And so you work the minimum amount of time and then devote all your other time to the book.
I just don't like it because it's all very circumstantial. And it all depends on very specific context that changes, right?
It does.
Like these metrics change, right? Yeah. Like if our goal is to go to medical school, like there may be times where Jovan says it's not worth doing this extra assignment, right? Because of the strain or the stress that it's going to take. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily working against his goal of getting to medical school, but it's just like a decision, a balance, like that he weighed in that particular moment of time with that specific set of circumstances. So like I don't
maybe like his production was like already good for the day, so he didn't need to produce more. You know
but like saying? Even if it wasn't, right? Like even if it wasn't for that day, right? So let's say like yesterday Jovan's production value was plus 0.2 and today it was negative 0.7, but like in the end, he graduates Wabash and he goes to medical school. Like
so, essentially, he produced a degrry.
I agree that people aren't robots and they're not going to be able to produce the same every day. But like you need there's going to be an average, right? You're going to have an average on like your daily production.
But the average is achieving the goal, not necessarily like how your time is divided between a day. Because I think humans are so complex. Like I think that this discussion is kind of narrowing kind of like how a human lives through it, like their day.
Like because computerized?
It's so predictable and it's so like, but really like it's not like at all.
Because
like,
one day you could essentially wake up and say, all I'm going to do today is consume. Yeah. But like in your logic almost, it's like, oh, I got to put in a certain amount of time within my day to produce, right?
But like, how are you just going to consume unless it's your day off of work? Like you got to think people have jobs, right?
I agree.
So like you already have a schedule for your job, right? Where you're going to work this much, and if you're jobless, I guess your number one priority is getting a job or making money.
Okay. What if you're in college and you and you have a scholarship, right? So like you don't have to work a job,
but you still have expenses.
What expenses?
What if your parents?
So your food's completely covered?
No, right. That's covered. That's covered in your
parents pay for your Netflix and everything. You don't spend money on gas.
Scholarship.
So wait, scholarship pays for your gas.
You get a stipend, $1,000 a month. Right? Then
you can devote all your time to school, and then you can balance. You can do enough to achieve your long-term goal of school, because you don't have to go 100% all the time.
I guess that's
right.
Kind of
and then you can divide your extra consumption time, or you can produce something else or consume something.
But do you see how that formula changes based on the context of every situation? Like it changes, of how you decide that.
My point is like if your consumption, right? We're saying that our short-term consumption is zero. Like we're not consuming really anything in the short term that's costing us money, right? Maybe costing us time.
Well, I think that
Is the camera dead?
I think that we will wrap it up for this episode. I think that generally, though, this is a great conversation, and I think that this is something that essentially we don't think about as, and us just bringing up this conversation. It's like, wow, what are those producers actually thinking about? The ones that create these fancy items, or these things that's in my phone, like the phone that's in my hand, or the calculator I use these book bags that it's like those people, like I'm buying whatever I buy, somebody has produced that. So it's kind of taking us to the other side of things of like, wow, I could produce a crayon and somebody could buy this crayon that I produce. Therefore, I am now a producer. Or I could produce a hat and now somebody has the ability to buy my hat, right? It's like now I'm kind of on the other side. So kind of get your butt on the other side is what I'm trying to say. Like produce something, anything. You could produce a song. You could produce something. And it could be something that you're passionate in. Go back to our podcast and discover what you're passionate in. But you could produce a meal, right? Because someone is consuming that meal, right? And if you can find someone to pay for what you produce, then now you're on top of capitalism. And this is how things go, right? So this is a great conversation. I challenge you all to kind of think about what you are doing in 24 hours of a day. Jovan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This was amazing. I think we'll kind of start off a little bit with this next week, but it was amazing. Last words. We got some stuff coming out. Stay tuned. We got a promotion going on right now. It should be over by the time you. Oh, well, actually, no. The promotion may be still going on. 50% off on our store. Go check out our store. Purchase some items. What do you guys got for him?
India said that the only thing constant in the world is change, and that's why she takes life as it comes. And I think for me and where I am personally, that's how I'm trying to take my life. I think that if you think too much about some things and don't just take them as they come, then you'll really just do a lot of stressing and anxietying for just guesses. So. And as always, be bold, be great.
It's I just talked a lot about money in my mind. I guess I always got money on my mind. I got money on my mind.
I'm glad it's that and not the other word. All right.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to make money, then you gotta be productive. So. That's all I got.
We talk about a lot of production, maybe leading to long-term goals, but I think a lot of people make the mistake of always looking into the future and not realizing how to enjoy the present at this time. So I would just encourage everyone to look where you're at right now, go do something fun in this day and age, and don't keep thinking about the future, because one day you'll get to the future and you'll wish you're in the past. And also, as a producer coming on this podcast, I want $35 next time.
And on that note, we'll see you next week.